All right, here we go. Another episode of Loser's Lunch. Let me just shut this off. Our weekly exploration in excellence. That's not so excellent right there. That was actually, before I say what that was, I just be curious. See, I can't sing. That riff sort of requires some vocals, but I'd just be curious to know if anybody knows what that riff was. Jen, if you have the answer, you can post it if you'd like. More than welcome to join in on the fun. So while we're waiting, and I'm looking here, so if somebody posts, let me know what I think I stumped everybody. I'll give a hint. It's become sort of a trend, I believe they call that. No. That's a good, by the way, Frank, that is I love that song. That is a good guess. And there are similarities. I mean, there's only 6 notes in the musical scale. So it's tough to make a lot of things sound totally different. It's a pretty good guess. It's become a trend on TikTok lately, I believe. Not that I'm in the TikTok scene. Follow me on Instagram, though. Presidente _EPM. We're taking the world by storm. I walk around now and everybody just goes choo choo. So that's pretty cool. So while we're waiting, any more guesses? Boy, we got to, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't even have it installed on my phone, to be honest with you. So today, if you saw the Mancuso Market Minute, we talked about, and as in we, I mean me, but we try not to say I or me. There is no I in team, but there is a me. Kobe Bryant, I think, said that. Anyway, New York Fed manufacturing report, Empire State, whatever you want to call it, negative 31.3. I mean, a hellacious number. Really bad. The components were even arguably worse. So you had that. We've got tomorrow a bunch of housing data, permits, housing starts, Red Book. Wednesday, Ginny's roll, MBA applications, retail sales. I'm really interested in this retail sales number, by the way. Some inventories, gas, Fed minutes, which I don't know why we'd even care about the Fed minutes at this point. I mean, like 2 weeks ago might as well have been a year ago. A lot has happened. We've got Philly Fed on Thursday with claims, and then nothing happening on Friday, and it's a summer Friday. Is that the last Friday before? No. Yeah, it is the last Friday. No, when is Labor Day? No, it's not. Second last Friday of the summer. So we're sitting here at 278. We touched 276 earlier in the trading. We still don't have a right guess. So the viewership fails. Even though Frank I'll give you some credit with the toadies. That was Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus. And apparently, they're using that song, I think on TikTok or something like that. Thank you, Kate. So back in the day, it's funny. I was always a rock and roll guy, not so much punk. And I wouldn't call Wheatus punk, but they're more like, I don't even know, like nerd rock, right? I mean, isn't that what they are? You sort of have Wheatus, you have Weezer. I think that the answer is to be nerd rock. You just have to have a W in your name. But it's a hell of a song. And I went down this rabbit hole yesterday on YouTube, last night on the phone. Shout out to the late Steve Jobs. And I guess Vice, this channel That's like probably like channel 792 on DirecTV. I don't even think it exists down here on Spectrum. But they have this like really neat little show that they do that shows you kind of the origins of these songs, most of which seem like kind of one-hit wonderish. And no offense to Wheatus, or I think his name is Brian Brown, because he wrote a hell of a song. And this song was the inspiration, because back in the day, you talk about how much the world has changed. They had to mute the word gun in the song. And he grew up on Long Island, and it was like the summer of '94 or something. And apparently this kid at a local school took a friend into the woods and shot him, and he brought his gun to school. So that's hence the line, brought his gun to school. That's in the song. And we were so sort of crazy back then and strict that they had to actually mute the song. They did like a record scratch over the word gun, because he said he took a gun to school, which now Columbine was a year earlier. You fast forward all these years and it's still happening. And so it is a sensitive subject, but at the end of the day, I don't know why we need to delete that from a lyric. So it was sort of, it's just as popular. I guess One Direction covered the song. I haven't even seen the cover. I'll check that out. I encourage you to do so. Anyway, we're talking a lot about music and not a lot about sales, mortgages, and the market. I said this last week, by the way, and I'm going to say it again. And at some point, I am going to ask Chuck for some royalties, some money, whatever it might be, referral fees, wherever legal. But this guy, Chuck Cowan, I'm friends with him on Facebook, never met him. He really does post some really interesting data on the industry. And by the way, if you're posting comments, and some of you are, make sure you post them on the EPM feed, because then I start looking for them all over, and we have like 3 different feeds, and then I never get to your comments. And that happened last week. And so I try to answer. But anyway, so Chuck always posts this great market data. And so you don't have to go all over the place. You don't have to go on Yahoo or Thomson Reuters or Bloomberg. And it's sort of all right there. And so he posted something interesting this morning, that we are at a 2-year low. And now all of a sudden, all this data is coming out, and we're kind of hitting 2-year highs and 2-year lows for the bad, typically. And we're at a 2-year low for bidding wars. We're at about 44%. At our peak, we were at just about 70%. So he posted that this morning. What else did you post today, Chuck? 7.8% of U.S. homes for sale now have cut their asking price in the last 4 weeks. That's the highest percentage since Redfin has been tracking that since 2015. What I say about that, by the way, for those who are keeping score, in November when I said we don't have 5 years worth of supply, okay? And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I'm saying that to ask the viewers to unplug from the matrix. I didn't have any data, anything like that. I just opened my eyes. I opened my ears. I opened my mind. Thanks, Jenna. I opened my mind to the fact that things aren't always what they seem, and common sense generally shall prevail. And the common sense of, awesome. And the common sense now, the common sense should prevail that if we have a little less demand and a little more inventory, I have a home for sale and cut it by 20K. It's been on the market, yeah, for 65 days. You know, we had a house down this, and I've said this before. The house next door sold on day one, 3 pocket listing, or 3 offers on basically a quasi pocket listing. And then the house down the block has been on this market for 60 days. You know, it's happening. As that, who is that? A Ron Paul meme. Is that a meme? Whatever it is, we and he goes, oh, it's happening. It's happening. Nominal retail sales continue to make new highs while retail sales have been softening since March. So some pretty interesting stuff. Take a look. A lot of the things you might not know. And that's interesting. Here's the other thing that I've been talking about. And Neil Robinson and I, who's a avid viewer of the program, we had our one-on-one earlier, and we were talking about things. And, you know, and again, this is where I advocate eyewitness economics. And he's been in the business since 2005. He knows the ebbs and flows, and he had some things that he was going to do around the house that right at the moment he's not doing. And I said to him, I said, Neil, let me ask you this question. Is it safe to say that you've been in the business long enough to know that next year, if not at worst case scenario the year after, but probably next year is going to be better than right now, volume-wise? He's like, absolutely. And I said, so I want you to think about this. If you have held on some purchases, like I'd imagine everybody who's watching this has, right? And you kind of know, you've been through the routine. And you have some degree of flexibility of income, being in commission and so on and so forth. What do you think the person who's on salary, whose COVID stimulus has run out, what do you think they're doing? By the way, anecdotally, consumer credit is at, you know, multi-year highs. The writing on the wall isn't great. And so here's what I say. Again, prep to run. My realtor folks, you know, you need to go back to basics of selling a home and not a house. Let's get together and create content together. Loan officers, realtors, insurance agents, contractors. Let's think out of the box. Let's build the pipeline back up. Let's go back to the just misses. It's working. Just like that other stuff is happening, we're seeing tremendous traction by going back to basics. We're seeing tremendous traction by just being in front of the borrower or the referral source. We assume that everybody knows that prices are down, okay? We know what happens when you assume. Go back to those buyers who just missed. Say, hey, do you know that not only are we not in a bidding war anymore, but we're seeing price cuts? You want back in? That's called prospecting. Well, what do you want to do? Just wake up and expect new homeowners to fall out of trees? Because that's the thing to do? Why do we have recruiters in business? I mean, you know, we're here working, right? We know that we're working for money, so to speak. And so, I mean, how did you get this job? By possibly leaving your last job. So then why do we need recruiters in the world? If that spark of inspiration to look for a new job just happens immaculately. No. We lose sight of that in business, and we lose sight of it particularly when business is too easy. That's sort of an inflation that we've had in our industry, so to speak, to just use the term loosely, because we're obsessed by inflation. The inflation that we've had in mortgages and real estate is it got too easy, and we forgot what it takes to pick up a phone book. 1988. First Amendment mortgage on Route 46 in Little Ferry, New Jersey. I was a junior in high school. And guess how I created leads and others like me for the company, a phone book. And it was a reverse phone book, I think is what it was called, because it was all the numbers in a particular town sort of sorted by street. And what did I do a little bit better than most to graduate from being a telemarketer to being a loan officer? Well, for one, I figured out what towns had the highest sales prices and home values, because it sure as hell seemed a heck of a lot easier to me to do mortgages on $500,000 and $400,000 houses than it did $180,000 and $200,000 houses. Then what I did was I figured out a hook. My hook was financial markets. So I talked about the Fed and the cash window and what was happening and how we could leverage mortgages to renovate. And I think I've shared the story. Well, I know I've shared this story before, but I don't think I shared it on Loser's Lunch. So when I graduated, summer of 90, I went to Ed Sherman and I said, so here's the full story. The full story is I answered an ad in a newspaper. I was working in Heise's Deli, cutting cold cuts. And that job sort of run its course. Like it was the cool job to have. But I wasn't really making the money that I wanted to make. And so I saw an ad in the newspaper and it said, make $20 an hour. Okay. And I'm scratching my head, not picking my ear, by the way. I mean, I guess I could do that too, but it looks weird. So I saw an ad in the newspaper and it was make $20 an hour. So I answered the ad and I think Mark ran the ad. I don't think it was Ed, but it could have been. And it wasn't for $20 an hour. Because by the way, you sell the sizzle, not the steak. That's sort of sales 101. It was for $6 a lead and $2 an hour. And you worked Monday through Thursday from 6 to 9 at night. And in about 3 months, I was making $500 a week. Think about that. In 1988, making $500 a week in high school, working 12 hours. And when I say it was 12 hours, I mean, coming early and leaving late really didn't help, because you didn't want nobody wanted you to call them after 9 o'clock at night. And you couldn't get anybody at 6 o'clock because it was, at 5:30 because it was dinner time. So really I got there at 5 to 6 and really didn't start until 6:15, 6:20. But anyway, and then that summer I said to Ed, I think I could be a loan officer because quite frankly, your guys are making sales because of me. And he agreed. And the rest was sort of history. And I got a lead in my first day or couple days, was for a house in Mahwah. His name was Tom C. I know his last name, but I won't say it here. And I called him up and I said, hey, you spoke with us and such. I'm not interested. I mean, almost immediately tried to shut me down. Like, interested in what? You didn't even know why I'm calling. And here I am, by the way, with a Steven Seagal ponytail because I had the long hair, but Ed made me slick it back. He was a Marine, so he hated my long hair, but I wasn't cutting it yet. So I was able to slick it back Steven Seagal style with the ponytail. And so I'm like, well, you don't even know what I'm selling yet. And I'm like, you talked to us and such last night and you were interested. What happened? Well, I already have a low rate. Now, the lead gave us all the information and his rate wasn't so low. It was like 10.25. So by the way, you want to talk to me about rate? This borrower didn't even know 10.25 was high. More on that in a minute, by the way. But so I really didn't want to sell rate. But at that point, I'm like, dude, okay, we're going to get you at 7.75. So I don't know what you're talking about. 10.25 is high. And he's like, oh my gosh, rates are that low? Yeah. So I worked up a bunch of stuff And I think I can either get you cash out, reduce your term, save you monthly, or do all of the above. Thank you, Roman. And I said, so am I coming tonight? And I think it was at 8 o'clock. I think he was, because we had two sits. There was the 6 o'clock sit and the 8 o'clock sit. I'm pretty sure he was the 8 o'clock sit. And he's like, yeah, come out. And so I pull up in my Ford Probe, I think it was. Because, that was before the 3000 GT. That was after I got my first commission check. I got the black on tan seats, black exterior, 1990 Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4. That thing was a sled, by the way. Looked like it went 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it was slow. But it was the best looking non-exotic car on the market. And I had my little car phone in there that we got because the cell phone was too big, that brick. I didn't do the Zach, what's his name, Saved by the Bell phone. I did the car phone at first. So I get there. We go out on his back deck. And if anybody knows Mahwah, New Jersey, was heavily wooded. And we're in this beautiful setting on the back deck. And the sale lasted all of about 90 seconds. 90 seconds, he signed on the dotted line. He saw my long hair, my ponytail. I don't think I was wearing the earrings. I probably just had the holes. Somehow we started talking about music. And he's like, I play the drums. And I said, I play the guitar. And we sat there for 2 hours drinking iced tea on his back deck, bullshitting. It was, Chris. It was. Red on red Ford Probe, the turbo one. I'll tell that story in a second, too, how I got sort of those cars. But I sold him for 90 seconds, and we bullshitted about music for the other 2 hours. And that was my first sale as a loan officer, not lead as a telemarketer in this business. And sort of the rest is history. The story about the Ford Probe is I wanted the 5.0 Mustang, right? And so my deal with my father was he would make the down payment. He would pay for my insurance, but I made the payment on the car. So my very, very first car was a 1978 brown and gold Ford Thunderbird with the 8-track tape and the sunroof, or it might have been a moonroof. So, by the way, for anybody that doesn't know, there was actually a thing called a sunroof or a moonroof. And if I'm not mistaken, the moonroof was that if it wasn't glass, and the sunroof was if it was. Because back in the day, the roof, the retractable roof, whatever it might have been called then, could have not been glass. It could have been made out of the same material that the roof was made out of, which was either, steel or whatever it was, aluminum or fiberglass, or, believe it or not, leather on top. Okay, this shit doesn't exist today for the most part. And so the sunroof, I think it was actually the opposite back then, which the sunroof was if it was solid, the moonroof if it was glass, but it could be the other way. And so what happened was Tim and I were driving to Rutgers one day, and the brakes failed, and I smashed into this car at a stop sign going 30 miles an hour in this tank. This lady jumped out who did not speak English well. So I don't know if she didn't have her license, her car was crumpled. My tank was actually better off because of this, because that's what this car was meant to do, is just run things over. And she jumps out. She's like, no, everything's okay. Just go. And then I came home that night and I said to my parents, I'm like, you guys are trying to fucking kill me. So I got to get a new car. I wanted the 5.0. And my father said the insurance is too much. So so I come home one day and the probe is sitting in the garage. And of course I got the pull-out Alpine stereo. We replaced that after the fact. And then because my father was my father and just, couldn't help himself but to always try to get me everything that I wanted. 3 months later, what shows up in the garage but a red on red 1990 25th anniversary edition 5.0 Mustang GT. That was his car that once in a while I got to drive. And there's another story behind that, but we never put any miles on it. Like, to this day, there's like 5,000 original miles. But and then I bought the after that, my father was a huge car guy. And probably one of the greatest satisfactions that I've ever had in my life was him washing the Mitsubishi in the driveway on a Saturday morning and then taking it out for a ride. He loved that car. I love that car. But as we're getting late in the half hour, I get back to why we're talking about this is, I more like Van Halen than Skinner, but you're right about that, Chris. And so what I learned on that day is never take no for an answer. Never prejudge a lead. Sell the sizzle, not the steak. And people want to be loved, accepted, and recognized. It was really a boot camp all in one sit, and that's what they used to be called, home sits. They would go into the house to call the sit. And then lastly, to be yourself. And if you have conviction about who you are and what you're selling, and you're doing the right thing by your product, by your customers, by your borrowers, you will win enough for it to pay off. And here I am. If I really think hard about it, this could be plus or minus one day, it was probably more like July. July was probably when I went on the sit. But arguably, you're talking about 1990, we could be like 32 years from the day. Now that I think about it, I think the first commission check came in August of 90, but it might have been September. But here we are, like the 32-year anniversary, plus or minus a month of me making my first sale as a loan officer in the industry. And it's been a hell of a ride. And I got to tell you something, we're working on some things, and I'm working on some things that make me more excited about being in this business than maybe I've ever been. I look at these periods as transformational periods, as potentially cathartic cycles in this industry. And ultimately, at the end of the day, opportunities, I've said this, I said it in my post on Instagram this weekend. Obstacles are excuses for losers and opportunities for winners. And now's the time for all the winners that are watching Losers Lunch to double and triple and quadruple down on their next 6 months, because it's happening. So Jenna, I wanted you to talk on this show because, again, we didn't have a guest. We got to get a guest on next week. So, by the way, if you want to be a guest, I think Chris would be a good guest. So let's get you on the list. you have anything you want to say, Jenna? You were supposed to talk. You said you'll be surprised I probably won't talk. He would be. So, so you're not going to talk? You're going to text? All right. So let's get Chris on the calendar. I think we're going to break 270. Choo-choo. I think we're going to break 275. Okay, we're at 278. We got the Fed minutes on Wednesday, as I indicated. I really don't care about what they're going to say. I can't expect that this data is going to be good. So here's what I'm going to say for the folks that I can't say in my minute necessarily. Okay. If you're closing in August, I think you should be locking here today, maybe tomorrow. If you're closing in September, and certainly the end of September, or you have a borrower who's closing the end of September, I'd be inclined to take some risk here, okay? Beginning of September, I might still be in the camp of locking. The Fed is a wild card. God knows what they're going to say and how many people care about what they're going to say or what they said, because it's the minutes, so they've already said it. I think that we're talking 285-ish, 275, 250, 230-ish, 225. Those are the levels. So now that we've bounced off of that 285, 290, I'm more inclined to lock. That doesn't mean we're not going to break through 275. And if we do, we're going to test 250. So if we break through, you're going to be pissed off you locked. Well, bulls and bears make money, pigs get slaughtered. I'm going to tell you, I think in terms of probability, there's about a 75% chance this week that we will break through 275. That's where I say, if you don't have the ability to wait it out, if you're closing imminently, all right, even though probability is on your side, you can't wait it out. Long term, you're going to refinance, or you're going to refinance those borrowers. You can guarantee it. This data is only getting worse, whether it be in 23 or 24. Now, if you have some room to let it breathe, if we don't break, if we bounce and you didn't lock, but you have 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, I just don't see any compelling reason to lock here. So that's my mindset. I think that should be your mindset. If you're a loan officer, you shouldn't be 100% lock or 100% float in your pipeline. It should be day to day and borrower by borrower. There are some borrowers that could take the risk on. There are other borrowers that are on the fringe that can't. If you're bringing borrowers back into the business that just missed in early Q2, those are ones you can't take a chance with. And be communicative with your borrowers. Here's what we're saying. Do you want to take this chance? What do you think? So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Chris, let's see if we can have you on next week. Until then, El Presidente _EPM. I recap the market pretty much every day in 1 minute. We try to make it fun. We try to make it high energy. We're coming at you like a freight train. I hit mute, but good thing I caught it. So thanks, everybody. See you next week.